Hey, welcome back to the Cash PG Lunch Hour podcast. Today, I got a special guest coming not too far away, right across the street. Her name is Dr. Kaitlin Herzog. And Dr. Kate, or Kaitlin, is the physical therapist that works for us. And we've been working together for almost a year and a half. But for the last few months, we've been working hard on the new objections people have now that the coronavirus is here and things are coming and going. And I wanted to have Kaitlin on the show because I know many of you are struggling with objections with patients now more than ever. I mean, we've had a harder time with patients or spending more time on the phone with them to get them on board. And I wanted to have her come on and share some of the changes we've made recently and some of the way that she's handling objections. So Kaitlin, thank you for joining us today and appreciate you being on the show and being an amazing employee and team member.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to point out to everyone on air that Kaitlin's not just a mini Erin. She doesn't have red hair. She's a little bit taller than me, and she actually likes powerlifting and said she enjoys CrossFit, but we all know that she said she didn't enjoy it in the moment, but she's starting to like it lately. So,
yes.
Kaitlin, I wanted to ask, well, for anyone listening, I had Kaitlin on the show back in, I believe it was in March, and it was episode 125. And we talked about transitioning our manual physical therapy patients to telehealth. And we went through the whole kind of process we used to do that at the time. And in the 4 months since then, we've had different objections. We've had great success with telehealth and then different restrictions. And now we can open to in-person and people's needs, wants, and desires change. So I figured we need to have her on to come update some things because, like I said, we've made some changes. But before we get into that, Kaitlin, I want to know, what have you been doing this summer to stay healthy and fit and, be not just an athlete, but, what have you been doing that you couldn't go to the gym, and how are you staying healthy? Can you just share some of those tips with us? Because it is important as physical therapists that we take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah, we got to practice what we preach. So I tried to do that a lot more during COVID. So Erin treats me for my left hip. I've got some left hip instability. So when I run, I have knee pain. So I started doing, I would actually do the homework Erin gave me on a consistent basis with good results. So back in the beginning of COVID, I would do interval running because it's distance running that gets me. And just trying to increase the overall distance and how many intervals I'm doing. So I was telling Amber, in March, I couldn't even run a minute, pain-free. But this past weekend, I did 2.69 miles. I mean, I had pain, but over half the intervals were pain-free. So
that's awesome.
It's awesome, yeah. So I try to run once a week and do CrossFit one time a week, whether that be before I coach a class or just hopping in a class because I'm trying to be a better coach. So I'll learn from the other coaches. And then Erin got me an awesome Rogue barbell, shout out. So during COVID, since we work next door to each other, he has this really cool covered patio behind his office. So I would bring his barbell. I got a whole bunch of weights for $1 a pound, which is a really good deal. And my gym was just portable in the back seat of my car. And I would just lift behind Erin's office, and he would sometimes see me and be like, quiet down. No, just kidding. But yeah, so I train that 3-4 times a week. So yeah, trying to just be more versatile.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. And what's the number one thing when you work out? What's the number one thing that makes you feel what's the word? Yeah, I'm doing exactly what my body's meant to do. Or I'm getting everything. For me, it's going on a 4-hour bike ride and coming home with Jello legs.
Yes.
For you, is there some specific workout that you're when I do this, I just feel so good?
Yeah, so usually it's my heavy day of Olympic weightlifting because I literally feel like my body died. It did everything it could do. And then I go pound some food with my friends and then go take a 1-hour nap afterwards. Yeah. So it feels good, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's always a fun time. So we hope there's a PR involved, but honestly, if I get anywhere close to 90% of my max on any given day, I call that a win for the day.
Well, back when I was your age, that's what I'd do is I'd wake up and I'd eat. I'd go on a 4.5-hour bike ride, pound some food, take a shower, pound some food, and go do 4 massages. And I did that. I worked 4 days a week. I rode my bike like 5 or 6 days a week. And that was my life,
Wait, was that when your body was hurting, or is that when you're like, oh, my body feels good? Because you didn't always take care of your body.
Yeah, my body, there was 1 year where my neck hurt, and it was probably, looking back, it had to do with probably the position on the bike I had, right? But I thought, my position, whatever, but it generally felt good. I didn't really start having shoulder issues until I stopped riding bikes and started doing yoga and really getting my body out of its comfort zone, which was, hunched over a bike. And I was like, oh, my shoulders hurt. And I was starting to do P90X and doing more pull-ups again. And just like, and then, that was 15 years ago. And then it was 8 years ago when I went to SFMA course, and, I did a couple things that I learned about my body there, ankle and thoracic spine, and my shoulders have felt significantly better since then. But yes, on my bike, I always felt really good. I had a period when I was in high school riding where I needed a massage. When I was training, I was getting massages. I had a live-in massage therapist girlfriend, Andra, who's now my wife, and I would go pay for them. Like I would eat ramen noodles, but I'd go pay for an $85 massage because it was worth that much to me.
You're getting into the objections right there.
Right. So, which is great. And it's like what, so yes, so there's the objections. Like I never had an objection at the time. I didn't know physical therapy could help me. I didn't know, I was like, screw this neck thing. Like the massage wasn't helping, but the physical therapists I all knew did hot packs, leg lifts, and ultrasound or post-surgical stuff. And they didn't, they weren't and this was in California, and they weren't advertising to me.
Yeah.
I would have paid good money for that.
That's why we love people like Andrew and Greg Todd teaching us how to be like, tell the public what you do.
Right. So what are some of the, like, you sent me a little list and I'll read out some of the objections, but what I want to know is, prior to Corona, what was the number one objection that we got from our patients?
Usually I would say it was they're still tied. So I still stand by insurance and cost being the top, but kind of something that came up as I was like getting ready to hop on here for this podcast that I didn't talk about in the Facebook group was like recircling and asking for the sale. Like pre-COVID, you'd only have to do it maybe one time, like handle an objection, you recircle, ask for the sale, and boom, sold. But now it's not as great because it takes a lot more time, but you probably have to recircle 2 to 4 more times now and just keep asking for the sale, or you have to let them leave and just keep calling and following up with them. Because that's the other thing, people are really slow to move. So like before Corona, if people were like, oh, I need to call my insurance and see if they reimburse, usually I'd give them till the end of the week and they'd have it done. But now people are just kind of like dragging their feet, and I've been calling this lady every week this is the 3rd week now, and she still hasn't called to get an answer. Yeah.
And so before Corona, people had an objection, you could handle it, even they were right there in the room, and probably 60-70% of the time we'd get them to enroll in one of our programs.
Yeah.
Right now, during Corona, it's like, not only I know Amber's spending more time with them on the phone, get them into a visit with you, but then you're getting the objection and it's sticking a little hard. It's the same objection. Yeah. We got to circle back with them once or twice, maybe even up to 4 times to get them to convert to being a patient.
And I also don't know if this is like a population pool that we have now of patients, or if this is just also a Corona trend, but now people are usually having other people pay for their healthcare. So a lot of it's been like, I can't just convert at the TBD because we have to talk to whoever is like the financial party responsible, which there's been a lot of that. So I don't know if people just need more financial help during this time, or it just is a random happenstance.
Right, because we don't have a very large sample size.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have hundreds of patients a week that we're doing this with. We've got a good handful. And so what are some of the, so let's go back. So when someone says insurance and say, what do they say to you? And then how do you typically respond?
Yeah, so usually people's objections, so they kind of fall into 2 camps. Some people are really upfront when they call in for their first time, and they'll just ask Amber, our front desk staff, point blank, like, hey, do you guys accept Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna? And then Amber will kind of run them through that sequence of, we're out of network. All that means is that, you know, we don't work for your insurance company. All of our patients have great insurance. However, they choose to come here because of the results that we provide. And she even like makes it optional. She says some people choose to file, other people don't. But if you do decide to file, it's super easy. Any reimbursement will go to you, not to us. And so then they're at least prepared. So then when they come to the TBD, usually they aren't objecting because we don't take insurance. They'll kind of frame it as, oh, I need to, like, it's expensive, so I need to call my insurance and then see if they'll reimburse me. And then I'll kind of come back and then decide if, you know, I'll get reimbursed. And so that one's kind of tricky because you have to decipher, is it cost or is it insurance? The objection, because usually it comes down to one or the other. It's not usually both. So I had someone, the lady that I've been calling for the past 3 weeks, I just asked her kind of point blank, like, hey, if your insurance did cover it, would you be on board? And she's like, yeah, 100% yes. And I was like, okay, if insurance didn't reimburse you, would you be on board? And she's like, no. And I was like, okay, what if it was completely within your means? Because she, you could tell, was very upper class. And I was like, if it's within your means and you could afford it, would you come? And she was like, only if my insurance would reimburse me. So obviously it was insurance is the objection.
Right.
So.
Right. Do you think that there is, like, or have you seen with certain people, there is a, that those objections become like a smokescreen for something else? Is there some other objection that you really get into and clarify with people when they just like, oh, but insurance or, you know, or costs or something like that?
Yeah, so in her case and a lot of other people's cases too, it's usually a combination of they're skeptical already, so that's kind of the smokescreen, but two, they like don't think it'll work for them or their pain point isn't big enough. So when people, this is the other part that's fun to deal with, we see a lot of active people, and active people are great. They're usually on top of their body and they want to be more preventative medicine. So it's great when they come in when they're flared up because their pain point's really big. But like for her instance, she was like, oh, my back flared up like a week ago. Now it's feeling great. I just asked my cycling coach for a bunch of stretches. He gave me stretches and I'm feeling better. And she was like, I just want to prevent this from happening twice a year because my back flares up twice a year. And I was like, great. Okay. How much longer are you willing to suffer? And how much longer are you willing to experience flare-ups? And she was like, well, I mean, I think I'm fine. If it gets this bad enough again, then I'll like fix it. But these stretches are really working. So I think these stretches are like going to be what's the ticket. And then I kind of asked her, I was like, well, why did you come in today? And she was like, well, I already had the appointment and I figured I might as well keep it, you know, like I didn't want to cancel it. And I just wanted to see if what you thought. And I was like, okay, here are my thoughts. You need physical therapy because her problem wasn't a mobility issue. It was a stability issue. So I told her point blank, your stretches aren't going to fix your problem. They're a great Band-Aid solution, but what you need is X, Y, Z. So that's like another big, I guess, take home point is basically finding out what the person sitting in front of you needs versus what they want, and then where that meets and giving them that.
Yeah. So like with those people, is it, what's the question? Like when you say, hey, you know, here's what I think you need. And they say, oh, but it's expensive, or I just want some stretches. Like, you know, most of the times, the first time they object, you know, if we said, oh yeah, okay, great, we don't do that. Or, you know, we can't help you if that's all you want. Or, you know, I can help you, but you need physical therapy. What is it that you say to people to redirect? Like, what would you say to someone who said that? Like, we're like, if we were role playing and I said, no, Kaitlin, but you know, it's, you know, I need to make sure my insurance covers this, or I just really need, you know, some stretches so that I don't, you know, so this doesn't happen a few times a year. How do you respond to that? Like in the moment?
Yeah, so usually I'll try to always tie it back to their goal. So usually one of the first questions we'll ask people in the beginning is like, if I could snap my fingers and you could do one thing again, or if it's not holding them back from anything, you can say, if you could do like anything or reach any goal, what would that be for you? So for her, it was like being able to cycle without back pain. And I just literally ask, I'm like, well, Mrs. Jones, like obviously calling your insurance is going to take time to get an answer from them, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, you mentioned to me that you want to be able to cycle without back pain. You know, how much longer are you willing to suffer? And usually people don't really have, they haven't thought about that. So you always have to give them that awkward, like 30 to 90 seconds, to just think about it and answer. And sometimes they don't. And then I'll kind of take it a step further and redirect and kind of reframe the offer. And I'll just say, like, would it be valuable to you if I could help you, you know, start riding pain-free with, like, in the next 2 weeks? Because assuming they're going to need 1 to 3 visits, and then just see what they say to that. And if they say, oh yeah, great, that would be valuable, to be like, okay, how about we get started today? We at least get you some results. You can call your insurance company after that if you really feel like you need to. And that's also kind of how we handle the spouse objection that we'll talk about later. But at least get them started, you know, the same day, because then at least they have some skin in the game, and then they're more likely to come back than if you just let them walk out the door and go call their insurance company and not get answers.
I think the important thing that I hear you saying is people are going to object. You redirect with a little bit different question, and then you don't just give it to them to then say, yes, I want physical therapy. You have to offer it again. You say, hey, why don't we get started today? And so that we can make some progress towards your goals. And so you probably have like a better chance. That's how you get a better chance of closing someone once they object once or twice, is because you're offering the same service. Like, let's get started today again, right?
Yeah. And then I would say too, I mean, I always like having a downsell option, mostly for the cost objection. Is like, if I've asked for the sale 3 times and they say no, then I'll be like, okay, like, I get it, Mrs. Jones, we can't afford that right now. Would you be able to afford like a cheaper option? I won't say the cheaper option, but I'll be like massage, or maybe one of our like online courses, and then at least get them some help that way.
You know, what about, you know, what's interesting is my understanding, like from my point of view, this summer we've been getting more of a, or maybe you're just better at handling the insurance one, but I've been hearing, and as we've been talking through what's going on, is we're getting more of a, that's too expensive for video. You know, like I wouldn't pay that much to come on video, but I would pay that to come in to see you guys in the clinic. You know, how did you handle that? Because I know people out there are still dealing with doing some telehealth, or, you know, even by the time you listen to this, we might have to go, even California's gone back into, you know, stay-at-home orders. Like, how did you handle that objection, where it wasn't that it's too expensive, it's too expensive for video?
For video, which I actually really liked that objection, because we found a way to kind of conquer it in a way that made the person commit. So I would always tell them, I'd be like, listen, I get it that it might be really expensive for video. I hear what you're saying, but, you know, to reach your goals, this is basically, I'll reframe, if you want to reach the goal of playing with your grandkids again, this is how we're going to get there. Lay out the plan for them again. And then I would always say, like, listen, we are doing this for, or I'll also put like a success story in there too. So I'll be like, I'll tell them about a patient and then say, hey, if you want the YouTube link to this testimonial for video visits, I'll send it to you, no worries. And then I would go on and say, for like that patient, what we did is we offer them like a free trial video visit, but this is only for people who are really ready to commit. We'll jump on a call, we'll do the full session. If you like it, great, we're just going to continue on. If you really think it wasn't worth it, you didn't get anything out of it, then it won't be deducted from your plan at all, and we will just see you in person. And usually people are at least willing to try it, and then they see the results, and you already got them committed. So we wouldn't do that for people that were visit by visit. But if they were payment plan or pay in full, we would do it for them, and I think all of them stuck. I don't think we had anyone that was like, no, my video visit didn't help me at all.
Right. Yeah, no, I think most of them were like, okay, great, I'll try it, because it was no risk, and they all got great results, and we had testimonials from a couple of them.
Yeah,
right?
It was really good. Yeah.
What about the people that objected for that same reason, didn't come in and see us, but then remember when we opened to in person, we called them back and said, hey, we're open in person, you know, and a lot of those people didn't take us up on it. Like, do you remember that? What was the real objection? Did you get to that with any of the people as you followed up with them?
Yeah, so a couple of them we did. One guy was like, hey, I'm happy on my painkillers. I don't care about getting better. I was like, okay. Yeah, he just wanted basically massage. hands-on type stuff. And then we had a couple people who had just sought care elsewhere. So it was truly like whoever's going to help me first in person is where I'm going to go. Because we did have some of those like mill PT clinics that were open throughout the whole like quarantine, even phase 1. A couple other people had tried PT, failed, and then basically had either sought like painkiller medications or other different forms of treatment, or still said that we were too expensive.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's interesting. And then what I'm sitting here thinking is like, God, it sounds like no one's coming into our clinic and getting PT. But what I want to go back and is ask, what are the like, with most people, we're getting these objections, but we're still able to close a majority of people into being patients. It's harder. It's less than it was before Corona, because there's a lot more reasons to give out objections. But are there people coming in and becoming patients who really have no objections? Or does everyone have something?
I've only had like one who was kind of like, oh, just take my money, basically. But even then, she kind of had an objection. You could just tell it wasn't really an objection. It was just her face was like, I don't want to be spending this money because I'm an athletic trainer. I should know how to fix myself, but I know I need this, so here. So it wasn't really an objection. It was just this is a grudge purchase.
Right.
And even someone who believes in PT, it's a grudge purchase. So you can just imagine like how much more painful it's going to be for people who are skeptical or just even on the fence.
Yeah. Why do you think people are skeptical and on the fence?
Sometimes I think it comes just from, one, people don't know what we do. So kind of what you mentioned earlier, like, oh, this is for post-surgical rehab or hot pack, leg lift, ultrasound. Another one is just that because we don't accept insurance, I think people are just like, wow, this isn't how things are normally done, and people kind of are afraid of change. Right. So even if it's good change, people are still going to be hesitant and skeptical to change, even if someone referred them and you have, all the testimonials in the world, it's still something new and something different. And then the other thing would be maybe let down by the medical system in the past, because we're typically, even though like our clinic comes across as more like holistic, still physical therapy is a very like medical type of term and with the medical system. So I think if people have been let down by the medical system, they'll like associate us with the medical system.
Yeah. What, those are all good points. It got me off my question.
Our tangents.
I know. I think it's interesting. And, I was going to say this. It sounds like we should just start accepting insurance and we wouldn't have to deal with anyone's objections.
No, don't do that. No, because then they don't have skin in the game. You get people that don't do their homework and they don't get results.
Right. Yeah. But some people get results just by getting off the couch.
True.
Right? Yeah. Gosh, it's funny because I'm sitting here listening and I'm going, God, it just sounds like we're running up against all the objections. And I'm going to share this. I've had a patient in the past, and one of my mastermind students yesterday posted about this in our Platinum Mastermind. She's like, I've got a patient who's come to see me in the past, got great results, was in a motor vehicle accident, came in for the free TBD, but the insurance adjuster, or the lawyer told her not to come see us. And I was just like, and it triggered some rage inside me because I've had the same thing with a patient who came to see me probably like 8 or 9 years ago. And then 6 or 7 years ago, I think this was right when Derek was moving. Maybe she came in right when Derek started working here, because I think I transitioned her to Derek. But anyways, she was in an MVA, and it was bad enough that she had major surgeries, but she wanted to come see us, was told not to. 18 months later, she was like, I don't care. I'm going to just come see you anyways. And in 4 visits, I got her back where she was able to actually work around her house to finish the renovation she started before this accident 2 years prior, and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, like the whole focus on insurance and payment, it just really like gets in the way of our healing. Right?
It does. Yeah. And especially it's crazy. I saw some like threads online basically about how, you know, like an ACL reconstruction is going to take 6 to 12 months to rehab, like 6 minimum, 12 if you want to return to sport. And insurance companies are approving the surgery, but only giving people 3 to 4 months of rehab. So they're not even like approving what it takes to rehab what they approved before. So yeah, it's crazy. But I think a lot of it, like, especially usually our top objection, I would say, is cost. And it's even harder because people have like more of a scarcity mindset during COVID, which is obviously hard to overcome. But I think part of it also is just overcoming your own like self-limiting beliefs. So something that was really empowering to me was like, I met with my financial advisor and we were just talking about finances, and he knows that I work in cash PT, so he was just asking how it was going, and I was like, oh, we're getting this objection all the time. And he was like, let me tell you what, like, some of the richest people that I work with are the most broke. People don't spend their money well. This is like where they're coming from. And he's like, but like, he's like, Kaitlin, don't let anyone tell you that you are too expensive. Like, you are 100% worth what you charge. And sometimes you just need to like tell yourself that, and just come in there with the confidence that even if they do tell you like, oh, that's really expensive, like, no, you are worth it. Just keep asking for the sale and just have the courage to ask 3 times. Cause I think sometimes we give up after like 1 time, but no, like literally ask 3 times and keep asking after they leave.
Yeah. We got to get 3 yeses before the sale, and we got to ask for the sale 3 times.
Exactly. And then don't let someone's like what you perceive as how like rich they are, like, will you like he said, like, some people with the most money are actually the most broke, and some people that are just middle class, your average Joe, can still afford your services.
Yeah. I've had some of the least objections from people that I expected the biggest ones from. You know, farmer,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
A farmer came to see me like 12 times, loved it, sent his wife, kids, family, neighbors, everybody, you know, and it's just like, people are like, oh, but you guys only treat affluent people. And it's like, we treat people that value their health, and they're willing to put their money into their health, not to like frivolous stuff.
Oh, which goes to another time. I was telling Amber, I don't know if I want to be this blunt with people, but sometimes when I ask people like, oh, how motivated are you? On a scale of 0 to 10, do you know, reach your goal? They'll say 10, and then they'll tell me, oh, it's too expensive. And then I'll just ask them to like explain to me. I'm like, well, you said you were, you know, a 10 out of 10 motivated, but what I'm hearing is you're really not willing to invest in your health to get there. So help me understand, like, where's that disconnect? And they usually like, they get angry because you politely called them out, because you say it with a smile on your face, but they're like, oh, maybe you're right.
Yeah. What kind of answers do you get from that?
I've had anything from like, I had this one flight attendant that was like, oh, you tricked me with that question. I'm like, no, I'm just asking you like how you're feeling and where your motivation is at. So I've had kind of an irritated response. I've had the, I guess I'm willing to invest, but not that much. And I'm like, okay, so then let's reframe. How important is your goal to you? Is there a goal that is more important to you? Because sometimes maybe people think that they want to be able to run 3 miles, but really they just want to be a part of their run club and have the community. It's more the community and feeling connected that they care about, not so much that they wanted to run. So reframing kind of what's their true emotional goal, not so much just what they think that they want. But yeah, those are kind of the big 2
and
ones.
When you reframe
they don't really
the goal,
know.
Like, so when you reframe the goal and they can think more about it, does that generally change and shift the conversation?
Yeah, because usually either they just feel more heard or understood, or they'll just kind of get emotional in like a good way. Rarely do people cry. Sometimes they cry, but sometimes they're like, oh, yeah, this is what I actually want and need. I just don't want my knee pain to go away.
Right. So it's less about the knee pain and the running and more about like, what does all that do for them?
Yeah, exactly. And also I found that it's really hard to get people to figure that out and express it to themselves. So that's another question. You usually have to find like 3 different ways to ask, because if you ask someone, hey, why is running to you important? They're like, oh, I don't know. And then it's like, okay, does running bring you joy? Or what about running do you actually like? Would you be sad if I took running away from you and you couldn't run anymore? So it's usually finding different ways to ask them that question, because usually it's not the activity that's important to them. Like for one lady, she wanted to be able to do CrossFit. And I was like, okay, so like, why do you actually like doing CrossFit? Because it doesn't sound like you do. And she's like, no, I actually hate it. But it's like the 1 hour a week me and my like boyfriend spend time together. So it's really important to spend time and you know, build our relationship. And I'm like, okay, great. So that's what you actually want.
Right.
Not to just do CrossFit.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's important to be able to tease that information out. And we can't do that if we don't really challenge kind of the smokescreen excuse, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
as hard as it is.
yeah. I mean, here's the thing is that here's one thing I know is even if people leave and we don't get the sale, they learn more about themselves and what they want and why things are important. And I've had people say to me, wow, Dr. LeBauer, like that was really, like that was insightful. I'm like, yeah, like, so can I help you reach those goals? But the goals aren't big enough, it's like, people are like, oh, I don't know why I'm doing that. I just thought I had to do that. I'm like, you don't have to, right?
No one's making you go work out.
No one makes you run. But there are consequences if you don't work out or exercise. Or what's I want to go back to the, because you just brought it up, like the spousal objection. So what's the spousal objection? And then how do you usually handle that?
Yeah, so usually I would say the spouse objection is just a smokescreen for like, I'm not sure. And I would say that more, or maybe that it's too expensive, because usually they're like, oh, well, they'll present it as like, I need to go talk to my spouse about that before I commit. Mm-hmm. And they won't really say what they're going to talk about. Or they'll just say like, oh, I can't spend that much money without checking with my spouse first. And so I'll kind of reframe it a couple different ways. I used to ask kind of like, oh, is your spouse like, do you think they'll support your decision? But usually people are like, oh yeah, of course, because they don't want to make their relationship look bad. Right. So usually I'll ask like, oh, just what are you going to discuss? And some people will say like, oh, we have a hard and fast rule that if we spend over $500, we have to run it by the other person. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, that's completely fair. I get that. And then I'll just say, how about we at least get you started today? You're not going to have to give us more than $500. You could just pay for our visit today. Or if you wanted to, Amber can send you home with some payment plan options and you can discuss which one is best for you and then come back and talk about it. So that's kind of one angle that we'll do. And I say that works like 25-30% of the time. And then the other, I would say 70%, I'm like, I will invite the spouse to come do a total body diagnostic. Mm-hmm. And then they'll just say like, oh, like, I don't think they'll need that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so like, why don't you think they would want to come in and see, like, and just kind of like tease out. And then once again, ask, okay, what are you guys going to discuss? And then they'll be like, oh, it's expensive. And then you go back to okay, let's redirect to expensive compared to what? Or mm-hmm. like, it sounds to me like you're like want to reach your goals, but you're just not willing to invest in your health. Like, help me explain where the disconnect is. So then you're just kind of reframing based on cost. And then usually the third option, which I just started out, so I don't really have how often it works, is we just made like those patient action plans. Mm-hmm. So usually what I've been doing with folks, I'm like, hey, let's at least get you relief today. And then you can go home and talk about it with your spouse. I'll fill out like a patient action plan for them. And then I'll say that way they don't have to come in here. You don't have to make them take time out of your day, and you don't have to remember like what's wrong with you, what we're going to do to fix it, to tell them, here's this action plan. It's like a tangible piece of paper, and they can take it home and show it to their spouse. So their spouse can be like, oh, this is what your money is getting you. Yeah. Which has worked so far.
Awesome. And then, are you getting people, like, do people go home and talk to their spouse, or is it, and call you back and say, all right, I'm ready to go? Or is this more like, we got to follow up with them?
Yeah, you usually do have to follow up with them. We actually had someone say that this last week. It was really odd because she's been a patient here before. Mm-hmm. And she still said, she was like, oh, I need to run it by my husband. And like Amber's followed up with her a couple mm-hmm. times, left messages. She hasn't called us back. I have tried several times as well, and still hasn't. So we don't really know quite what's going on there. But she did kind of think, she left, she grabbed her back pain book on the way out, and she's like, oh, I wish I would have just signed up for this online. Mm-hmm. I think if I just do these, I'll be fine. Right. So I have a feeling we're just going to have to follow up with her in a couple months and be like, yeah, your back pain didn't go away, so let's get you back in here. Right. Are people, but it's so now more than before, we handle, like, if people don't enroll right at the time of the TBD, it's, objections, we handle the objections, they enroll, and then more people, they go home, we have to follow up with them. Like, we're actively following up with them once a week to, from their thing to, from their free visit to get them in and start as a patient, which, I mean, I know has worked with quite a few people in the last few months, because Yeah.
Like, wow, that person, like we would talk about the objection and the next week the person's on the schedule. And I'm like, wait a minute, oh, what was the objection? So what are you finding is like what is it that, is it something that is you're following up with them, or are they kind of figuring things out, or are they coming to I think the word I'm missing is like, is there an epiphany that they're having that's like, oh, that is going to work for me, or I can be successful going here for PT, or, is there something that you're noticing?
Yeah, so there's kind of two things, because Corona's been a weird time where a lot of times people would like make the appointment when they had a job, then they get furloughed, and then they'd literally tell me, oh, I think I'll be, back on my job in 3 months, call me in 3 months, and then sure, I can come back. So we've had that happen, but the biggest thing is just like exaggerating their pain point. So kind of like I mentioned, a lot of active people, they won't be hurting or can't recreate their pain when they're like in my office, but then they'll go home, I'll call them a week later and be like, hey, so are you back to running 3 miles again? And they'll be like, no. And I'll be like, okay, how did your last bike ride go? Did you have back pain? And they'll be like, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, so it's been a week, and what progress have you made since the last time I saw you? And they'll either say I've made no progress, or it's actually getting worse. And then once again, reframe, ask for the sale, and be like, okay, so how much like longer are you willing to suffer and not see any progress? Or wouldn't it be awesome if you could see progress, in 1 week? Let's get you in here and at least get you started on the path to your goal.
Right. And is that the thing? Like, is that what it is? It's like they go, oh yeah, why don't we get started?
Yeah, it's like exaggerating their pain point and just like making them realize like it's just not gonna like magically get better the more that you wait. Because I think a lot of times I don't know, everyone's just kind of in that, let me just hibernate and hope things go away. Let's hope our politics get better. Let's hope this virus goes away. And it's like, well, you can't just sit forever and wait for things to get better, because they're not going to get better.
Let's hope the back pain goes away.
Action. That's not how it works. So it's just kind of, I guess, widening the gap between where they're currently at and like where they want to be.
Right. So what you're doing is you're finding out where they are, and you're stretching the possibility, and creating a gap between where they are and where they might be if they do nothing, or where they can be if they do something, right?
Ooh, yeah, that's another one. I hate using the scare tactic, but I mentioned this, in the group, where people are either striving to reach a goal, or they're trying to like prevent something from happening or prevent something from getting worse. So maybe it's like, my knee hurts now, I don't want to tear my ACL, or, oh, I don't want to get surgery. So sometimes instead of asking them what their goal is, you have to kind of ask them like, hey, if you don't take action on this problem, like, where do you see yourself 6, 9, 12 months down the road? And then you have to have them imagine the big scary stuff. And like, I hate scaring people, but sometimes you even have to like paint the picture, because they'll be like, oh, I don't know, like the same place I am at now. And I'm like, well, if you don't do this, it increases your risk of injury. And like, sometimes you have to paint the big scary picture, or you have to say, well, what if you couldn't run? What does life look like for you? And that's never a pleasant picture that they want to paint.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I think that what you bring up is a good point, is that we're not in the business of scaring people to take action, but some people don't have goals. They just don't want to end up like their parents. But that's not why they come in to see us. Their back hurts. Yeah. We have to kind of tease those things out of them. It's like, what is it that they either want to gain, or when they don't know, what is it that they want to avoid? And we have to really like, help them spell it out for themselves, or spell it out for them. Like, this could happen, like, but you're not putting the words in their mouth. You're saying, what would life be like, right, if you did nothing and it got worse, or you got injured, like, and you couldn't.
And sometimes, if they don't have a really good answer to that, like, what would life look like 6, 9, 12 months down the road? And I'm like, okay, well, obviously you're in here to like avoid surgery. So like, what's your biggest fear? What is the biggest fear that you could have? And then that's sometimes what'll get them to kind of say it. That's
great. That's a great one. Before, I want to also talk about, we've changed a few things. So the way we do it is we invite people in for like we've been inviting people in for a free total body diagnostic in person, right? But we were doing those on video. And what was the problem that you had doing that on video? And what did we start doing instead?
Yeah, so we would have a lot of people on video. One, it's just harder for some people to connect. So a lot of our elderly patients would either need someone to help them, or it's just really hard because they're hard of hearing or just had trouble connecting. So that was one patient population that was kind of hard to connect. Some people have been like let down by the medical system, so they just, I want you to touch me where it hurts, and that's probably all the convincing that they really need.
Right.
So for those folks, we kind of offer both options right now. So if you want to do a video visit, it's no cost obligation. We chat. That's great. We're totally okay if you don't feel safe coming into the clinic. We even have some of like our wellness warrior people still on video. Right. If you do want to come into the clinic, we just explain to them it's going to be like a nominal fee of $35 just because we have to clean, reserve a space for you, which takes away from our paying clients and all that good stuff. And it also kind of shows to us that they're at least willing to invest some money. And so I can say, hey, why did you spend the $35 to come see me then today if you weren't serious about reaching your goals?
Right.
And we've been finding that that works really well. I think our conversion rates are a lot higher doing the $35 in person than online because we can connect with them. And like we said, if they're willing to invest a little bit, we also post as being like risk-free because we'll apply it to your plan of care, but they're usually a lot more willing to hop on board with that.
I think we've only had, 2 people come in and say, after paying the 35, they're not going to do it. But I think one person's still following up. I think it's for the people that do come in and pay it, the conversion rate is very high. I haven't actually done the numbers, but it's like 80%,
Yeah. And some people we do both. So some people, I had one girl with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. So she's used to doctors having like never heard of her syndrome at all. So she wanted to do video with me first. So we did a video call. Then she came in person. She recently had a bunch of health flare-ups, so she has to get cleared for physical therapy. But she seemed like another one who was like serious.
But that's someone we've been nurturing for months. Yeah. Right?
Because I did a talk to a PT with her before the video call too. Yeah. So, and Amber spent so much time on the phone with her. I think, like you said, people just need a lot more connection and time invested in them for them to convert.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the big thing I've noticed is we've spent more time with people along the way. One, they don't get connection at home, but 2, they need more kind of, I guess, reassurance that they're on the right path. Right. And then I guess if there's a third thing, it's showing me that what people really, what people really want is yes, for us to talk to them and hear them. And then some days I go, well, do they understand that they don't get this anywhere? They're not going to get this anywhere else. If they don't
get it,
they are not. There may be 1 or 2 other people. I could think of maybe 1 or 2 other people in Greensboro who we know who might do something similar, but in the 90% of the places these people are choosing to go, they're not going to get anything close. They're probably not doing anything about the problem, which just makes me sad. But if there's if someone listening is like, oh my gosh, I get all those objections all the time, or they've never actually tried to respond to a patient's objection, what would be your best advice to them, or a rule to go by, or something like that?
Ooh, I would say have the confidence to keep reframing and asking for the sale, and don't sell yourself short, because usually half the time it's like a confidence problem. So be confident and keep asking for the sale, and don't think you're coming across as nagging, because essentially you're advocating for this person's health. Because what I found is we still follow up with people even if they say no, and we try to make sure just to find out where they've sought help elsewhere if they have. And half the time, if people don't say yes to you, they're not going to go anywhere else, or they'll just go for the quick fix and get the injection or the surgery. So just use that as kind of your motivation, you're essentially trying to save them and help them help themselves. So use that as your motivation, not that you're nagging them or trying to take their money, even though they might think that. And always use that for your true motivation, because you're going to come across as more genuine, and they'll like you more, and you'll build trust and rapport.
Yeah.
And then I would say also, however you get into the Facebook group that I did the lives on, go watch all of them, because I think it's 2 hours worth of objections training. So
yeah. So anyone listening, Kaitlin did a 4-week series of objections training in the Physical Therapy Business Ignition group. And that's a group for people that are in my private coaching programs or online courses like the Cash PT Blueprint or Ultimate PT Marketing System. So if you're interested in those, shoot me a DM on Instagram or somewhere, give me a shout out, because those are really valuable. And so she did those, and I was like, we need to get her on the podcast and share like the big highlights from that. So thank you for doing that for me and for us. That was really helpful. Let's see. I think the other question I had, the last question I had was, how did you, because you've mentioned this a couple times, how did you build the confidence to be, or how did you build the like the mindset or the confidence to be confident in your value of what you're worth to patients and what you're worth to, you know, our business, or, you know, like to even just say, hey, you know, Mrs. Jones, this is going to be 8 visits and it's a couple thousand dollars and you're going to get every penny's worth, you know, if not more out of it. Like, where'd you build that? How'd that come along?
Yeah, so I'd say it's definitely been a learning curve and process over the past year and a half. I would say, let's see, you gave me the book, You Are a Badass at Making Money, which I would definitely suggest. I'm still only halfway through it because, like, self-development books, I tend to only read, like, one chapter at a time because I'm like, I'm actually going to do the homework. I'm someone, if you give me the homework, I'm going to do it. So that book has a lot of homework, which is good. The other thing was just having, like, a money expert, like I said, tell me, like, no, you're worth what you charge, Kaitlin. Like, you're worth more than that. Because you also, this is the other thing, and just, like, reading research. So I think I mentioned in one of the videos that technically people are more likely to spend less money if they go out of network than in network. So they're actually saving money. And it's good for you to know that, but your patient's not going to care about that. They are going to buy on emotion, not logic, but it gives you the confidence to know that, like, people will tell you, oh, you're unethical for doing cash-based. Like, no, it is ethical. You're actually saving the money. They're avoiding all these dangerous things. So just knowing that is, like, a nice little confidence boost. And then I would also say, for me, it was challenging because I've only had, like, one negative, I guess, PT experience, like, one as a patient and then one as, like, a clinician / PT student. But just, like, knowing what Aaron mentioned, like, out there when you have to juggle 3 to 4 patients an hour, no one's going to listen to this patient. Like, no one's going to have time to actually evaluate them every single visit to know, like, have their symptoms changed? Is the problem elsewhere, et cetera, et cetera. So just, like, knowing that you're providing basically the best treatment for that client also gives you kind of leverage to be like, yeah, I am worth it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's really great. Anything else you think is helpful that I didn't ask? I think I got through some of the main questions that I had. You know, any questions for me or or anything else you think is relevant that we should chat about before we finish?
How did you gain the confidence? Because you also, like, I have a great mentor, but, like, you just went out of school. You're just like, hey, I'm going to start this business. Let's go.
Yeah, it was tough. You know, when I was in PT school, I was charging $85 an hour for massage. And I was like, well, if I'm Dr. LeBauer, people are going to pay me like $10 an hour or more. And I was way undercharging, but I didn't really have anyone. It took me 10 years to really build that confidence that, you know, I was worth, you know, $2,000 minimum for a plan of care, if not more, for people, for the way that I changed their lives. And part of it was going, like, I started learning it because I taught other people how to do it. I taught Derek and Tyler and you. And I was like, if these guys can do it, like, shit, I'm worth twice as much. But really, you guys are better than me because you've learned more in a condensed period of time. You're better clinicians than I am. And because you guys know more and you have more room. Now you have more room to keep growing, you know, after just like a year, like Derek came right after school, you came right after school, and Tyler was 6 months after school. So you guys in like a year and a half after school have like 20 years of compressed knowledge. You know, so one, it was teaching. 2, it was slogging through the experience. And I definitely went through periods where I would say to my wife, I was like, Andra, like, why aren't the patients coming to see me? Like, where are they? Are they really getting them better? You know, like, I didn't know, like, there was this like 3-year period and I didn't really have like a clinical mentor who understood what I was doing. And she's like, but Aaron, they're paying you, like, you're clearly worth it. They're, you know, and I was seeing 25 people a week, but I was like, you know, like, what's happening? Is I had a lot of self-doubt around it until I started working with a coach again and coaching other people and teaching it. So for me, it was doing it for a long time, having experience and reflecting. And then really it was when I started teaching how to do this, that's when that's when the confidence really built. And so that's one of the reasons I was like, I want you to go do that objections training so that you can teach it, because that really helped. But, it was, and then seeing the results people get and and knowing what the alternatives are, it's unfortunate, I think, that as physical therapists, we undervalue ourselves, and we're undervalued as a profession for the results we get in people in the world. Medicare and private insurance certainly doesn't value us, so we have to value ourselves for the results how we change our patients' lives. And it was also going in and learning more about sales. When I learned about sales and about selling the transformation, not the knee pain solution, I realized, hey, I'm helping people play with their kids and be with their spouse again. That's worth more than $100 an hour for 8 hours. That's way more than $800 to me,
Yeah.
So that was
Priceless.
all those combinations. But like I said, that took me a few minutes to explain, because it took me way too many years to really do that, because I wasn't surrounded by people that knew what I was doing or how I was doing it. It was just like in isolation trying to figure this out, and a couple pieces started falling together. And then as I taught it, it just went, I was like, oh, here's the formula. So
the formula.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say is have a mentor and surround yourself with people doing the same thing or doing bigger and better things.
That's it. 100%. 100%. So, well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights, because one, it's great to hear. Two, I don't get to spend as much time across the street. Three, I wish we could have hung out in the same room and recorded this episode, but we're doing it on Zoom because of the corona. And four, there are a lot of people out there that still need your help, need our help, and need everyone who's listening needs your help. And you can't sit back and go, well, the patient just gave me an objection, I guess I'm not good enough, they don't want what I have. It's your duty to follow up with them and keep handling the objection and offer the services, because they're hurting and they're injured, and they're going to be told, go get the MRI, go get the surgery. Don't go to the out-of-network clinic, go in-network, so you can look better on your MBA case record and all that stuff that puts insurance over healing. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That's
my people better. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's always fun.
Yeah. So if you guys got anything out of this episode, here's what I'd love you to do is, we're actually, Kaitlin, where do people find you on Instagram? What's your Instagram handle? And if someone wants to learn more about you or follow you over there, learn more about powerlifting and stuff, where do they go see you?
All the things. Yeah, everything. So my handle is Kaitlin Herzog, DPT. So awesome. It's KAITHERZOG and then DPT.
Cool. Is there anything else that you want to share, or that's pretty much the number one place other than our clinic website to find you, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can add me on Facebook. I'm not a huge Facebook user, but yeah, I would say clinic, Instagram too, LeBauer PT. I'm on the stories.
Yeah, awesome.
So going on rants, coffee fueled rants.
Right. This is what I'd love for you guys. If you're listening, would love it if you got anything out of this episode. Not only would love a rating and review on iTunes, but more than anything, take a screenshot of this, or take a picture of yourself and just screenshot and post on Instagram stories your number one takeaway. Tag Kaitlin, tag me, and even you could tag our clinic at LeBauer PT is where you'll see her working, and work in our social media with Amber, and just let us know what resonated most for you. And if you try one of these scripts with one of your patients, just let us know the results that you get. Otherwise, tell your friends about this show, tell your colleagues, and tune in again, because we got some amazing episodes coming up for you on the next few shows. So thank you so much for listening, and keep on taking action. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks.